"What do you mean you're taking my ride?" Lieutenant J.G. Alberto Yaramillo demanded. His voice echoed off the tiles of the deserted tubeway station, which had been scrubbed clean of most of the bloodstains from the Word of Blake raid. "Just that, Berto," Gavilan Camacho said. "I'm commandeering your mech." It wasn't something anyone in the regiment would exactly have predicted. The younger Camacho was known to aspire to bigger mechs than his Shadowhawk, whose weapon systems could not be repaired in time to get him back into the fight. No matter how loud the young force commander yelled at Zuma, Astro Zombie, or Chief Armorer Bogdan Michael Stax Stakuski. Yet here he was, pulling rank to get into the cockpit of a Scorpion. Not only was the mech the same weight as the red-tailed Hawk, it was also the least popular mech in the outfit. Close Quarters, page 452 through 453, by Victor Milan. The story of the Scorpion began with a dream. While some visionaries worked to harness electricity or placing the first human footsteps on Terra's moon, others took on an even more daunting challenge. When Dr. David Harrison looked out at the universe in the mid-26th century, he envisioned battlefields that were dominated not by bipedal battlemechs, but by stable and powerful quadruped machines of war. Following the successful development and sales for the bipedal catapult, Hollis Industries had the resources to devote to Harrison's dream, and by 2564 a functioning prototype designated the XNT-20 Xanos went into testing. It weighed an intimidating 100 tons and was packed with weapons in the unfortunately traditional one-of-everything design philosophy. Dr. Harrison envisioned large formations of the plodding Xanthos quads pushing through front lines in unstoppable waves. Unfortunately, the Xanthos' primitive engine, cockpit, and armor limited the speed and flexibility of the design. Mech warriors testing the platform complained that the Xanthos handled poorly, to the point that completing the complex maneuvers to turn the mech toward a threat risked tripping up the mech and triggering a fall. With just a 3-5 movement profile, the Xanthos was extremely vulnerable to attacks from the rear, with just a single small laser facing that rear arc. Dr. Harrison dismissed much of the criticism, pointing out that the Xanthos wouldn't operate alone, and support units could make up for the single mech's vulnerabilities. While he wasn't technically incorrect with that statement, the Hegemony Armed Forces and Hollis Industries themselves were pretty disappointed. The Xanthos project was shuttered and Dr. Harrison moved on. Thankfully for the Doctor and fans of quad mechs, the dream didn't die with the Xanthos. Dr. Harrison ended up convincing the Brigadier Corporation that there was still merit in developing a four-legged battlemech. That must have been one heck of a lunch meeting. Dr. Harrison argued that a four-legged design would be a much more stable weapons platform that could rise or fall at an angle to improve the firing arcs of the weaponry. Additionally, it could cover or scamper under terrain that a bipedal mech could find challenging. Of course, he had to prove it, and the first attempt hadn't gone well. Going back to the drawing board at Brigadier, the decision was made to create a quad battlemech for the medium mech class. This proved to be a saving grace for the 55-ton SCP-1N Scorpion introduced in 2570, just 6 years after the Xanthos debacle. The last 2 decades of the Age of War saw little in the way of large conflicts beyond the Third Endurian War. Brigadier was looking forward to creating a new mech that could do well in whatever the future had in store. Time was not on their side, as few things are worse for weapons manufacturers than when peace breaks out. The company held out hope that there would still be buyers even under this new interstellar order called the Star League. With bold claims that quad battlemechs would change mech combat forever, the Scorpion walked, or scurried isn't the right word, perhaps waddled, off of Brigadier Corporation's assembly lines and into the history books. Constructed from an in-house produced Brigadier 800F frame around a Vox 330 fusion engine, the Scorpion 1N could hit a top speed of 97 km per hour. However, one of the biggest complaints from mech warriors who attempted to bring the mech up to speed was just how rough a ride it provided. The awkward jarring motion created by the quad's legs created an experience described as like, quote-unquote, strapping yourself to a raging bull. Dr. Harrison and the rest of the Scorpion design team argued that the rough ride was worth it in order to create a very stable firing platform when not actively moving. The Scorpion could also crouch down much lower than its two-legged peers, creating an advantageous battlefield profile. 7 tons of Star Slab 4 armor provided 112 points of protection, which placed the Scorpion at the lower end of the spectrum in comparison to others in the 55-ton weight bracket. For example, the Griffin 1N, Shadowhawk 2H, and Wolverine 6R all carried 9.5 tons of armor, offering 152 points of defense. In fact, even the Trebuchet and Dervish had a half-ton more armor than the Scorpion 1N. The saving grace for the Scorpion was its speed. Keeping it moving to reduce the accuracy of incoming fire was the key to living a long and happy Scorpion life. Once the other non-essential bits, like a uniquely designed gyro and cockpit, were added, that left the Scorpion with 11 tons of mass for weapons and ammunition. The Scorpion team decided to devote most of that to an Anderson Armaments particle projection cannon located in the mech's right torso. This allowed the Scorpion to punch hard at distance in hope of avoiding getting into those close-range squabbles. However, if caught up in the fray, a Marvel 6-load short-range Missile 6 launcher installed into the right torso was intended to make a good fight of it. The launcher was fed by just 1 ton of ammunition stored in the left torso. Unfortunately, that's it for the offensive punch for the Scorpion 1N, and the earliest known historical records are apparently tainted with stories of how the Scorpion ended up on the losing end of fights with other mechs. Combined with the poor reputation among mech warriors, and it seemed that Dr. Harrison might have failed once again to achieve his dream of a quad-mech-dominated galaxy. However, not all was lost. Brigadier was able to find enough buyers for the Scorpion to justify continued production, and by the end of the First Succession War, there were 2 functioning factory lines, one within the Free Worlds League and one within the Draconis Combine. If the Scorpion was going to succeed, it would have to fight for its place in the military units of the Inner Sphere. Often it was found in mixed units of tanks and infantry, acting as heavy fire support with that PPC and SRM launcher. During the battle for Assad in 29-25, the Hausmark Fusiliers of Orient's 4th Brigade found themselves sweeping through defensive infantry in a swampy marsh. The 4th Scorpions suddenly became the belle of the ball as their forelegs distributed the mech's weight in a manner that prevented being stuck, and the heat sinks were cooled thanks to its low-slung frame. Their PPCs were fired freely, and 2 companies of Liao guards were tied down due to the consistent fire. It was one of those moments where the stars aligned and everything went the Scorpion's direction. On the planet Styx in 2944, a crafty Draconis Combine commander ordered several lances of Scorpions out into the open to draw out fire from dug-in units from the armed forces of the Federated Suns. Under the impression that this was a tactical blunder and an opportunity too good to pass up, the AFFS left their positions to descend upon the Scorpions, which they considered easy prey. Again, water played a role as the Scorpions lashed out with coordinated fire and were able to give as good as they got. It is claimed that the fighting went on for several days, and the Combine victory, with the help of the plucky Scorpions, contributed to taking control of the planet. By the dawn of the 31st century, the Scorpion was a very rare sight on the battlefields of the Inner Sphere. Never very popular, many house units used them until they were dysfunctional, and then abandoned the mech to the scrapyards or pillaged them for useful parts and materials. A concerted effort to purge the mech from the books of the Lyran Commonwealth rendered the Scorpion practically extinct within their territory. "I'm telling you, Sutton, I can't put that gyro in your mech." The angry mech warrior sergeant pressed her hands tight against the sides of her head in frustration. Glaring at the tech, she pointed emphatically with all the fingers of one hand locked straight out at the massive piece of machinery sitting on the flatbed cargo hauler next to her dervish. "And I'm telling you, Cassano, that you can. Now!" Sergeant Enrico Cassano visibly swallowed whatever he was going to say, and then he held his hands up, palms out in front of him. "Ease off, Ray. I'm not saying I won't. I'm saying I can't. That's from a Scorpion, you said, right?" He waited for her angry nod and then continued, "Okay, then I physically cannot put it in your dervish. It's heavier, has a different housing, and it's not calibrated for your ride." "It is a gyro. They all work the same," Rachel Sutton said through clenched teeth. "You said mine was beyond repair, and so I brought you a new one. Okay, so it's the wrong size. Take out some of my missile storage or something, slap the thing in, and let's go." "Just figure it out. page 160 by A.T. Agostino. Shrapnel number 19. Records show that there were field variants for the Scorpion, and most of them involved jury-rigging additional armor plating onto the mech to improve its durability. Surprisingly, there wasn't an official variant until 3030 in what is known as the SCP-1N Wendell, and it was a refit for a specific Mechwarrior. Rendell Puritan II was employed by the Smithson's Chinese Bandits, a mercenary unit operating during the Third and Fourth Succession Wars. He and his Scorpion 1N fled the Lyran Commonwealth when he learned that the mech was slated for decommissioning. Through work as a mercenary, Wendell struggled to keep the battle mech running due to its shortage of spare parts. Eventually, he was forced to remove the PPC when it was damaged, and the only replacement weapon available that could approach the same power and range was a large laser. This may have been a blessing in disguise, as this allowed for the addition of 2 tons of plate armor, bringing the total up to 9, which set it on par with the other classic 3025 55-ton battle mechs. While the damage output for the Wendell Scorpion was nerfed a bit, the 2 additional tons of armor is a significant and welcomed boost. Combined with a lack of a minimum range on the large laser, this Scorpion ended up being a much more effective close-range brawler. It's quite possible that our friend Wendell stumbled upon a winner out of sheer necessity. By the 3040s and 50s, when it seemed that every battle mech was receiving fancy new Helm memory core upgrades, there was little desire to see an update for the Scorpion. With no active production lines, the Helm upgrades had to be done as aftermarket refits. The most common change was to pull the PPC from the mech's right torso so it could be replaced by an ER-PPC, improving the Scorpion's range. Designated the SCP-10 Scorpion, that weapon swap was the only change from the original 1N. At least that was the case until it was later discovered that the Scorpion 10 also received double heat sinks thanks to a clerical error in the Comstar historical records. This turned out to be a very good thing because without those double heat sinks, the 10 would have been a complete disaster due to the heat generated by the ER-PPC. With the 10 double heat sinks, the Scorpion 10 could fire the ER-PPC on the run and remain heat neutral. Adding the SRM-6 into the mix resulted in only a +1 into the red while running. This combination of upgrades preserved the Scorpion's need to keep moving quickly, and now it could act as a true sniper machine out to 23 hexes. Without getting too far into the works of fancy upgrades like endosteel and ferrofibrous armor, the Helm Memory Core Scorpion 10 was a solid and reasonable upgrade. One notable Scorpion 10 Mechwarrior was Adrienne Marshigama, who inherited the leadership of her mother's command over a Liao-aligned unit conveniently named Marshigama's Legionnaires. Adrienne was a quirky character as she was known for recruiting men and women for her unit based upon physical attractiveness rather than technical skill or battlefield prowess. When all heck broke loose with the Word of Blake kerfuffle, Adrienne and her Legionnaires fought ferociously against the Blakists. Her Scorpion 10 was nicknamed Black Beauty, and it was from all accounts a standard design. In 3077, Adrienne went up against Demi-Percenter Lumi Koskinen in his Blue Flame in the middle of the city on the planet Zurich. After luring the Demi-Percenter into a trap by shutting down half of the mech's heat sinks and appearing to be nearly shut down, Adrienne hammered the Blakist commander with repeated ER-PPC shots. When Koskinen began to retreat, Adrienne's Scorpion was able to keep pace with it, cutting down the opponent and breaking the Word of Blake's hold over the city. Fans of the Scorpion would have to accept the 10 as the standard well into the 3060s, when Defiance Industries discovered long-forgotten records, designs, and prototypes for a Scorpion land-air mech program on Hesperus 2. Astonished and somewhat befuddled by the boldness of the design, decision-makers were initially quite dismissive of reviving the nearly extinct Scorpion. However, someone savvy must have been involved in the process because there were elements like a completely redesigned chassis and improved coordination between the 4 legs which were seen as useful. When combined with recent technological developments like a light fusion engine, Defiance Industries decided to revive the Scorpion. Introduced in 3066, the SCP-12S shares little in common with the original beyond the squat crab-like appearance and the missile pod on the right shoulder. It was constructed from Defiance Slam endosteel around an Edisich 330 light fusion engine which maintained the original 97 km/h top speed but at only 18.5 tons instead of the original 24.5. 10 double heat sinks kept the mech cool, and 9 tons of standard plate armor brought the mech up to par with the other mechs in the 55-ton category. For better or worse, depending upon your personal preferences, the PPC from the original Scorpion was replaced with an LB-10X autocannon in that right torso slot. It was fed by 2 tons of ammunition stored in a case-protected left torso. Finally, the original SRM-6 launcher was left in the right torso with its 1 ton of ammunition also stored in that case-protected left side. The final result was a Scorpion that was much more attuned to medium and close-range combat. One of the traditional roles for the mech was chasing down lighter mechs, and the more accurate LB-10X leaned into that. As neat as that is, the downsides for the Scorpion 12S are substantial. While the inclusion of a light fusion engine isn't as egregious as an XL, that left torso is a weak point that opponents are unlikely to miss. The mech's 3 tons of ammunition are protected by case, but 3 out of the 5 criticals are ammunition, and the other 2 are engine criticals. In the case of an ammo explosion, the Scorpion is not only going to fall, but it's going to be unable to get back up without its 2 left side legs. It's a critical issue for all of the quads, so buyer beware. On the bright side, the 12S is impossible to overheat unless you're standing on the surface of a volcanic biome. A full alpha strike while on the run only generated 8 heat, which makes one wonder why they went with double heat sinks at all. Maybe they were protecting it from inferno missiles or foreseeing the threat of plasma weaponry. The Scorpion 12S isn't a bad mech, but it does highlight one of the biggest flaws in quad mechs. Their lack of open critical locations significantly limits what weight-saving features could be included in them. The use of endosteel takes up most of the open locations on the mech, forcing the use of a light fusion engine in an attempt to free up enough mass for a decent weapons loadout. A quad having 12 fewer critical locations than a bipedal mech is devastating, and without a technological discovery to fix it, the quad mechs are forever hobbled in comparison to their bipedal peers. Deployment of the redesigned Scorpion from the production lines on Furio led to a surge in popularity. Mech warriors who had heard rumors of a horrific bucking experience while piloting the mech were instead treated to a relatively smooth and comfortable ride. Although advertised as being capable of hunting infantry and battle armor, the Scorpion remained vulnerable due to the quad's lack of arm firing arcs with torso-mounted weaponry. Still, finally, the Scorpion was accepted as viable and a worthy battle mech. It just required hundreds of years to finally realize its potential. Dr. Harrison might have been proud. Gradually, the Scorpion 12S could be spotted across Lyran units and even among friendly mercenary units who were bold enough to gamble on buying the design. In 3067, communication from the word of Blake to the Brigadier Corporation showed interest in taking what was started with the Scorpion 12S and pushing it further with their own design. Brigadier's decision-makers agreed, and for the first time in centuries, they began to produce a new Scorpion designated the SCP-12C. Unlike the 12S, the 12C was built using a standard structure around an extra light fusion engine, and it carried 11 tons of ferrofibrous armor. The mech's movement profile didn't change, and neither did the 10 double heat sinks. The 12C's primary weapon was very clearly the ER-PPC nestled into the right torso. It was backed up by a single ER small laser on the left torso. An improved NARC beacon launcher was installed into the right torso, and 4 tons of pods were included in the left side. Finally, an improved C3 computer was added to the center torso, weighing in at 2.5 tons and taking up 2 critical slots. The end result was a machine that could snipe from great distances and could absorb a decent amount of damage. However, the INARC is a bit odd, as it committed the Scorpion to move into mid-range in order to make use of the 9 tons of equipment and beacons. It was an odd build and one that could flourish within a C3 Lance. I've never used the 12C in combat and likely won't, but if you're a Word of Blake fanboy or fangirl, it could be worth checking out. Records show that most of the production run for the 12C disappeared into the nebulous ranks of the Word of Blake. How many ended up in their various phantom divisions is up for the historians to sort out someday. The 55-ton Scorpion was one of the few 4-legged battlemech designs ever built. It was ugly as sin and had a horrible kidney-jarring single-footed gait like a mule. But it mounted a highly respectable Magna Firestar extended range PPC, and most important, it was low slung enough to pass through the tubeway tunnel under the compound. It was an obvious choice to lend some muscle to the 12 light mechs from 2nd and 3rd Battalions assigned to exfiltrate through the tubeway and jump the ghosts from the rear. Close Quarters, page 453 through 454, by Victor Milan. Scuttling a few years down the timeline to 3071, the next official variant for our Scorpion was the SCP-12K, and it shared a lot of structural similarities to the Word of Blake 12C. It also had a standard frame and an XL engine, but carried just 10 tons of ferrofibrous armor. The weapons loadout was unique compared to earlier variants because it embraced a new technology of its day. A multi-missile 9 launcher was installed into the right torso and fed by 2 tons of ammunition stored on the left side. For mid and close-range conflict resolution, a snub-nosed PPC was added to the right torso. An ER medium laser added to the left torso added a bit to the medium and short-range fire, and the entire build was capped off with the addition of a C3 master computer to the left torso, suggesting the 12K was intended for a rather swift command platform. Overall, the build looks like it would be fun to pilot, but without even case on that left torso, a Mechwarrior risked a lot by sitting on those 2 tons of MML9 ammunition. If the mech were to get into trouble in a battle, I expect most of that ammunition would end up dumped to avoid a catastrophic, rapid, unplanned disassembly event. If you're running a C3 force and want a master control mech that is out of the norm, the SCP-12K might be the mech for you. Just 1 year later, the SCP-1TB was spotted, which went another direction toward making the swift medium mech even faster with the installation of a mask system in the mech's left torso. This could temporarily push the mech's movement profile from 6'9 to 6'12 in a pinch. The 1TB's structure was standard around a light fusion engine, and it carried just 7 tons of standard plate armor. We were spoiled so much recently, it's scary to see the armor doll have just 10 points of armor per leg. The multi-missile 9 launcher once again makes an appearance in the right torso, though the 2 tons of ammunition for the launcher were placed in the center torso because, well, why not? If you're not going to rock the case or case 2, then just go wild and live life on the edge. This is fine. This is all fine. Backing up the missile launcher, 2 light PPCs were installed into the right torso and provided some fairly consistent and long-range fire. The 1TB's 10 double heatsinks were more than enough to handle the loadout. The only serious downside to this plan was the 3 hex minimum range on those light PPCs, which left the mech with only the SRM ammunition for the MML9 to defend itself from close-range attack. Mechwarriors who pilot the 1TB Scorpion would likely do well to make use of the mask to escape situations where any enemy closes on them. Our last 31st century Scorpion variant was the SCP-10M, and once again it employed some new technology in hope of self-actualizing this mech into something formidable. It was constructed from endosteel and a bigger XL engine along with an extra light gyro. The new movement profile for this mech was 711, which made the Scorpion incredibly fast for 55 tons. With 9 tons of standard plate armor, the 10M was able to get quickly into battle and survive it for long enough to contribute to the effort. Go team. The 10M Scorpion's primary weapon was a heavy PPC located in the traditional right torso location, and it was backed up by a long-range missile 10 rack in the left torso, which was fed by a single ton of ammunition also on the same side. The mech's 10 double heatsinks could handle the 15 heat generated by the heavy PPC and the LRM together, but at a run it would still leave the mech at a very happy +1 heat into the red. The Scorpion 10M's damage output is respectable when considering its 15 damage in one location from the heavy PPC. Unfortunately, it requires that XL engine and an XL gyro, which means concentrated fire could very quickly disable this pricey design. Overall, I'm wary of the cost-benefit of bringing the 10M into battle over other options. I personally tend to shy away from all-or-nothing weapon builds, and not even the LRM-10 can dissuade me from this one. Sorry, but not sorry. Our last 3 variants on this wild and bumpy ride through the history of the Scorpion come to us thanks to 2 companies and our dear friends in the Wolf Empire. Brigadier Corporation once again takes their best shot at updating the design, and Bander Battlemechs tosses their hat into the ring with their reimagining of the Battlemech. The Wolves just do whatever they want because they have infinite time and resources. We're going to tackle the Clan Wolf variant first because, as the best faction ever without any flaws, they should always go before all others. The Scorpion C was introduced in 3150 and was largely inner-sphere parts with clan weapon upgrades. It benefited from endosteel, a light fusion engine, and carried an extra light gyro. 11.5 tons of standard plate armor kept it safe from incoming fire, and a supercharger added to the left torso pushed the top speed to 612 in a pinch. Things started to get spicy with the addition of the clan-grade ERPPC to the right torso along with an advanced tactical missile 6 launcher. With 3 tons of Case 2 protected ammunition in the left torso, this Scorpion could be a pain for an enemy at all ranges. Finally, because you know we needed one, an emotional support micro pulse laser was added to the left torso. While not unexpected, the Scorpion C is very strong in comparison to its pure inner sphere tech peers. The Case 2 makes the ATM-6 viable for a quad rocking that light engine. While I can't prove it, I just assume that the Scorpion C played a pivotal role in the Clan Wolf victory on Terra over the Republic of the Sphere and Clan Jade Falcon. Our second to last variant arrived in 3135, and it was Bander BattleTech's SCP-1BR. It used a standard Brigadier structure wrapped around an Eadeh 330 light fusion engine. The traditional 690 movement profile was retained, though mask was added to the left torso, which could boost that top speed up to 129 km per hour or 612 for those playing the game at home. 8 tons of heavy ferrofibrous armor provided 158 points of protection, and the standard 10 double heat sinks were left untouched. The weapons loadout looked a lot like the Scorpion 1.0, with the ERPPC located in the right torso, but in the BR, the accompanying missile launcher was swapped to a Streak SRM-6. The single ton of ammunition for it was placed into the left torso along with case. Overall, the Scorpion 1BR is entirely functional, sturdy, and can chase down even light mechs with its mask system. Heat isn't an issue unless alpha striking on the run, and even then it's just 1+ into the red. If you're looking for a medium mech that can keep up with the lights, the Scorpion 1BR might be your date to the dance. Now it's fitting that our last official variant arrives thanks to the Brigadier Corporation. They started all this off, they might as well finish it up. Their Scorpion 2N scuttled off the assembly lines in 3133, and it was a showcase for a variety of newer technology knickknacks. Built once again with their in-house endosteel, the 2N saved weight with an Eadeh 330 light fusion engine and an extra light gyro. The 11.5 tons of standard plate armor made the 2N a tough nut to crack. The theme for the 2N was to get in quickly, set everything on fire, and escape. The linchpin for this effort was the supercharger in the left torso, which could boost that top speed to 129 km per hour or 612 for those at home. But once it reaches its destination, what about the fire part? Well, my friends, that's what the FlameTech Inferno plasma rifle installed into the right torso is for. With its 2 tons of ammunition, the Scorpion 2N can cause quite a conflagration before needing to get out of dodge. Aiding the plasma rifle were 2 MML-3 launchers located in the right torso, fed by 2 tons of Case 2 protected ammunition in the left torso. Finally, just for fun, target acquisition gear was added to the mech's left torso to allow the 2N to spot for artillery. Overall, it's a flexible machine that could cause a ton of heartbreak with that plasma rifle. The 2 MML-3 launchers are the frosting on a very spicy cake. I like the 2N and would take it over the 1BR if I had to choose between the two. Most of you already know why, but that plasma rifle is just too much fun to pass up this time. Now, speaking of helping infantry and battle armor self-actualize as Texas barbecue, we do need to tackle a totally unofficial and non-canon Mechfrog variant. While some of its details might not surprise you, I think I might have struck gold and created a nearly perfect Scorpion. Starting with an endocomposite frame and a 330 light fusion engine, the plan was to save as much weight as possible in a race to fill up every critical location. The addition of 8 tons of ferrofibrous armor contributed to this goal. After that, there were precious few critical locations left for our other nonsense, but as always, we pushed forward. The plasma rifle, located in the right torso, is a great weapon for the Scorpion as it doesn't take up much space and its ammunition is inert, so you don't have to worry about adding case 1 or 2. In the left torso, 3 ER medium lasers back up the plasma rifle with a similar range profile. Finally, a targeting computer was added to the left torso, which just so happened to fill up the last available open critical locations. Once we slapped on 3 more heat sinks, the mech was ready to go. Firing all of the weapons while on the run leaves the Scorpion 1MF at +1 heat into the red, which is spectacular for 4 rounds of sustained shenanigans. With every nook and cranny filled and every ton of space accounted for, all the Scorpion 1MF is missing is an emotional support small laser, but we can't have everything in life, can we? If you're up for giving this custom variant a try, I've included the PDF record sheet for it in the video notes below. If you do run it, please come back and let me know how it performed. With at least 2 producers now constructing new Scorpions, rumors of the mech's extinction seem to be premature. Even with the quad's inadequacies in comparison to bipedal battle mechs, it seems there are still people who see their benefits as worth the opportunity cost. Reports suggest that Brigadier's Scorpion has become popular with planetary militias, small factions within proximity of the old Republic of the Sphere, and even mercenaries seeking an unconventional edge in combat. Some may be counting on the hesitation that one might have in seeing the scrambling 4-legged Scorpion running across the battlefield win the day. So when I ask why we love the Scorpion, I think it boils down to appreciating the fact that the BattleTech universe is enriched by the non-conventional and the non-min-maxed tools of warfare that exist in the setting. While most would prefer any of the other 3025 TRO mechs in the 55-ton class, I'm glad that the Scorpion exists. It demonstrates that not every technological advance is a winner, and that's okay. I'm sure there are a few people out there still using their Zune MP3 players that they purchased in 2006 without a care in the world. If you're a big fan of the Scorpion, I'd love to hear your rationale for why you keep it in your lists. If there's a variant that you think is its ideal form, please let me know in the comments below and we'll keep the discussion going. As always, thank you for sticking around and listening to my nonsense. I hope you enjoyed it and will return next time. If you feel the video was worthy and want to see more, subscribing to the channel and hitting that like button makes the YouTube algorithm happy. And we want to keep the algorithm happy. So very happy. Going one step further and becoming a channel member directly supports the channel and creation of future videos. Only through the continued generosity of these members is this grand experiment possible, and I really appreciate that. Until we meet again, please take care of yourself and go make the world a slightly better place today and tomorrow.